Ireland and England have a long, complicated history, starting with the Norman invasion of Ireland. This invasion began on May 1st, 1169, and was led by Dermot MacMurrough, who was the King of Leinster at the time, and was aided by King Henry II of England. Because of King Henry's involvement with the invasion, his influence grew, and eventually King Henry gained significant power in Ireland, bringing with him Catholicism. In 1541, following an uprising led by the Earl of Kildare, the English had full control over the Irish, and in 1801 they became part of the United Kingdom. But the Irish did not take this lying down. They did not invite the English, and they were ready to fight. Up against one of the most powerful nations in the world, the Irish organized at the grassroots level to fight back against the British. Their efforts show how powerful and effective this kind of organizing can be. In May of 1921, Ireland split into two parts, Northern and Southern Ireland. Northern Ireland remained part of the UK, while Southern Ireland became independent. This was all due to the Irish War of Independence. This involved the Irish Volunteers, a group that was founded in 1913, to oppose the UVF. The UVF, or Ulster Volunteer Force, was created in 1912 to reinforce the idea of UK control and to disrupt the idea of Home Rule. The Irish Volunteers were ready to use arms. Their motto was to secure and maintain the rights and liberties common to the whole people of Ireland. The Irish Volunteers consisted of the Gaelic League, the Ancient Order of Hibernians, and Sinn Féin, which was their political representative later on in the 80s and 90s. On April 24, 1916, the Irish Volunteer Force launched the Easter Uprising. This battle lasted 5 days. They were joined by the ICA, or the Irish Civilian Army, and Cumann. Cumann was the Women's League, which was formed to assist the Irish Volunteers. This group was founded on April 5, 1914. Instead of being stuck as nurses and cooks like most women in conflicts at the time, they were placed on the front lines to fight. They were positioned at all of the outposts in Dublin except one, where the general did not approve of fighting alongside women. The members of Cumann went on scouting expeditions, dispatches, fought alongside the other soldiers, and transferred arms between camps. In 1922, Southern Ireland seceded from the UK thanks to the efforts of the Easter Uprising. Tensions continued to rise back up in the 70s due to the IRA. The Irish Republican Army was a group based in the Irish Volunteers, and were pushing back against the British Loyalists. Most people consider the Battle of Bogside in August of 1969 to be the beginning of what people refer to as the Troubles. The Troubles were the time in Ireland between 1969 and 1999, during which battles were fought in the streets and many civilian lives were lost. The Battle of Bogside occurred because of the Loyalist parade called the Apprentice Boy Relief of Derry. The battle was more of a riot. Petrol bombs were made from milk bottles and barricades were placed around the town. The riots lasted 3 days and involved petrol bombs from the Nationalists and CS gas from the Loyalists, which acted as tear gas. The Nationalists requested gas masks but were denied, leaving them defenseless against the poisonous fumes. In response to this battle, the British government ended up deploying more troops to Northern Ireland. After the IRA failed to protect Belfast from British soldiers in December of 1969, they were mocked. Written on the walls all over the town was "IRA ran away." As a response, a group of IRA members split off from the IRA and formed the Provisional Irish Republican Army, referred to as the PIRA. These soldiers weren't afraid to push against the British with force. Carrying heavy weapons through the streets, these soldiers were very dangerous. Eventually, the UK implemented internment for the members of the PIRA, not given trial and immediately arrested. After a protest led by the IRA and its supporters on January 30, 1972, involving 150,000 people, the UK dropped paratroopers in and killed 13 civilians. This event was referred to as Bloody Sunday. Only in 2018 did the families affected by the massacre get justice, when at least one of the paratroopers was identified and arrested. In response to the attack, the IRA burned down the British embassy with petrol bombs. Later that year, on July 21st, the PIRA showed the full force of what they could do. They set off 26 bombs in Belfast, injuring 130 people, while an additional 9 were killed by 2 car bombs. Among those killed were 2 women and a 14-year-old boy. 77 of the people hurt were women and children. These bombs were a response to the UK ending the ceasefire and resulted in chaos for Ireland, but also the IRA. People who had joined the IRA and PIRA after Bloody Sunday no longer wanted to be associated with this violent group. After 1972, 496 people were killed and 277 of them were civilians. Following this period of violence, there was a short 2-year wave of peace and progress, which eventually led to the formal recognition of Sinn Féin. It became a legal political party in 1974, and a ceasefire was reached between the IRA, the PIRA, and the UK. After that, the internment was ended for members of the IRA and PIRA in 1976, and people were tried in a jury before arrest. The only issue with this was that they were now recognized as regular prisoners, and no longer given special treatment or special identification. As a response, a member inside the prison refused to wear the prison-issued uniforms by wearing bedsheets. As PIRA members followed, they were referred to as the Bedsheet Men. This movement lasted 5 years. Another protest held 2 years later in the same Maze prison was against the lack of sanitation and sanitary living spaces. It was referred to as the Dirty Protest. The protest consisted of bedsheet men smearing their feces on the walls. During this protest, in 1979, the Queen's uncle was assassinated after a bomb was detonated by IRA members on his boat. More prison protests took place, this time in the form of the hunger strike of 1980 and the hunger strike of 1981. They were still protesting the right to better sanitation and the right to have special identification. The first hunger strike failed, but when they tried again in 1981, Bobby Sands joined. He became the next elected MP during his strike because of his influence in the IRA. This brought a lot of attention to him and the movement, especially when he died 66 days into his strike. In 1985, the Prime Minister of England and the Taoiseach, Garret Fitzgerald, brought about the Anglo-Irish Agreement. This allowed for political and cross-border conversations to be held, allowing for safer and more humane ways to argue and discuss. But the violence did not end. Following this agreement, many more nationalist deaths were attributed to the Loyalists. 9 IRA members were gunned down, 6 during a bombing, and 3 suspected of being bombers a year later. Additionally, IRA members were gunned down by Loyalists while they were attending the funerals of others previously killed. In 1988, during a funeral for one of the 3 gunned down that year, 2 British soldiers who drove into the procession were beaten and killed in retaliation. Media covered it, and it was broadcast on live television. For the next 6 years, several bombs were set off all across Ireland by the IRA, some of which were focused towards politicians, and one bombing of a shop in Belfast that killed 10 people. In 1993, the UK and Sinn Féin signed an agreement that allowed the integration of both the Irish culture and the British. This was called the Downing Street Declaration. In 1994, the IRA started to pull back on their military operations. This was done to create a safer peace process. In 1996, the IRA ended that promise and bombed Canary Wharf. This attack was not approved and was done by rogue members. In an effort to try again at peace, the IRA reissued a ceasefire, and a new round of peace talks began, bringing together the IRA, the PIRA, Sinn Féin, and British representatives. Peace talks were halted on December of 1997 when a Catholic man was killed. This was the first act of violence since the July secession. Another act was committed by the Loyalists in 1998 as the peace talks resumed. Then, in late January, the British representatives removed themselves from the meetings due to more murders, and Sinn Féin was denied representation in the British government. After years of fighting and violence, the British government and the Irish government tried to reach another peace agreement in May 1998. This was referred to as the Good Friday Agreement. It, too, was short-lived as only 4 months later another attack was carried out by the IRA. This was the most deadly attack carried out by the IRA in its history as an organization, and still is, killing 29 people. This rescinded the peace that was just reached and did not allow for Sinn Féin to join discussions. The main issue still was to disarm the IRA. Unfortunately, this did not happen, allowing for the Good Friday Agreement to become invalid and peace not met. Even though the IRA did not reach its goal, the grassroots protests did bring influence and power to the organization. This really brings to light the full power of grassroots-level organizations like the IRA. We can look in our own modern American society and see grassroots organizations similarly bringing about recognition of important inequities, if not change. Some examples are the ERA, Black Lives Matter, and the LGBTQ National Help Center.